Or that's a part of this.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
so call the meeting. It's all good. Call the meeting to order at 5:01. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Any additions, deletions to the agenda?
No, I'm a little worried about our CCA presenters.
You need to call somebody?
Probably be pretty tough if,
Well, maybe if we have to
there are a dozen kids.
do a work session at 6.
I think maybe we could at least do the rest of the meeting,
Yeah,
Sure,
not. Let's do that and see where that goes.
okay.
I move that we approve the agenda and move the TCCA to the end of our meeting unless they arrive in the meantime.
When they come.
I'll second
Did you
that.
get all that, Amy?
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Let's put a little arrow down. So I guess, is there any community comments? We didn't, there's nothing on there. Yeah. Great. And then I guess we're right on to business finance report.
Make this meeting go.
I got it timing. No.
I would drag out like.
No, I'm just kidding. This is the most important part, so.
We're flush. We have lots of money right now. We collected almost $10 million in taxes in November, so it's helped our bottom line a little bit. It's up about 4% from last year at the same time.
Say that again.
It's up 4%.
Our tax collection's up about 4% from the same time last year.
Can I ask why only $1 million? Don't we get a heck of a lot more than that in property taxes? Do we not?
You know what? I wanted to, not that this answers that question, but you just made me think of something. This report that you guys have, there's about $1 million off between the local option and the regular tax. I have corrected copies. I
Yeah.
corrected it on this one. I thought I got both of them. I was looking at it tonight and it's like. So the regular taxes are overstated, and the local options understated on the one you have.
Okay.
Okay,
Apologize for that.
So,
but I thought I heard you say we got $1 million in property taxes. And I look at our budget,
10 million.
'cause
We got 10 million.
we have 10 million.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay,
so, sorry, I sidetracked there, but yeah, Jeff, we know it's 10 million, yeah. We'd be in trouble.
and so how much did we get this November? How much was taken in?
I have that information, 9.8 million.
Okay,
So yeah, just about all of it.
okay.
Any other questions? Moving right along then.
yeah, what's a federal forest? You know what that is? What's that?
Some kind of a federal grant
Correct.
pass-through kind of a program.
Okay, it's a grant.
Which one?
The federal forest fee, what is that?
We do collect a minimum amount of federal forest fees. It's land that was set aside, I don't know how long ago, many years ago. Timberlands.
Right.
That we collect tax.
the state does, and then it goes out to schools, and if we have properties within our boundaries, like, for example, I believe the Jewel School District doesn't take state money, they're completely funded, but from forest money, or were at one point. I don't know if they still are, but at one point they were. So it just depends on what the revenue is and where it comes in from. But there was also an article recently about the federal forest fund being underfunded and some potential settlement coming. It's a really confusing dichotomy of figuring out whether we actually will benefit from it. Ours is a relatively small amount, so we're not counting on it making a big difference. So,
Okay,
Yeah, we don't get that much and. That doesn't matter, but it used to be subtracted from what we received from our state school fund, but that, they fixed that for you, so. It's pretty minimal.
just like our property taxes, it's gonna
Right.
come off of, even though we collect them locally. It'll come up, we don't get any more money based on collecting more taxes, we're gonna get the same amount.
okay, that's just. Perfect. Okay, right on to Kurt.
All right, I think we are continuing with in the enrollment update, we're continuing where we thought we do about this time of year, we kind of. Flatlined for a period of about 3 months. And we're in that, usually after the Christmas break is when we tend to start increasing. So we dropped a couple kids at the elementary, added a couple at the high school, so we're pretty stable right now with where we were. So a little below our projection overall, we projected 1180 to the state, so we're, 1169, we're about 10 students short, but as has happened in the past, we're tend to be over by the end of the school year. We'll see if that trend keeps up. That's kind of how we, give our best estimate when we project to the state. So, I don't think there's anything to be panicked. Obviously, we don't want to be under. We end up having to pay that back in the correction. We've had to do that once in my tenure. The other times we're pretty close. And usually one year, I think we had to pay 110, and other times we get between 90 and 100. And I think the most ever was a 150 May correction, I think. Yeah, so roughly in that ballpark. So we're pretty close with that adjustment. And it's a 2 years in arrears kind of, right? They go through, clean up our data, see where we are, and then it's for 2 years later. Anyway, so enrollment is about where we think it should be.
$150?
No.
1,000.
Okay, that makes.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is it a student, 12,000 or something?
For the state, we're about 10.8 is the state
10.
contribution. I mean, if you put federal monies, it's more per kid, but with the state, at least last year we looked at it, was about 10,800. Yeah. So,
Okay.
All right, bond update.
Kurt,
Yes.
sorry, do you mind, I want to give you an update on Raven.
Oh,
I got in contact with her, so she did not know about the earlier time.
okay.
Said the kids are gonna probably show up at about 5:30.
Okay.
So somebody between 5:30 and 6, just so you know that they're still.
Perfect. Then we can do it.
Thank you.
Towards the end of the meeting.
The kids.
The bond, we are in the middle of. We should be getting the quote soon to move the 2 portables off the other property so we can utilize those. That will. Sensibly, I believe will be pretty much at the end of our bond funds. I mean, there's between that and the greenhouse is being constructed by a community group. We paid the fees for the permits. But Dave Hiller, who has erected several greenhouses for us and in the community, is going to spearhead that effort as well. So we're fortunate to save some money there that allows us to do some kind of other last minute, like moving the portables without having to dip into other.
And where are they going?
They're going behind the high school. We have one existing back behind the greenhouse already. One of them is gonna go facing the one, so there'll be a common porch or pathway that they'll put in. And then the other one will go on the backside of that one and will be facing the other
And
direction.
will they be classrooms or used for something else?
At this point, we don't need them for classrooms. The one facing the special education transition center may become an extension of that support. The other one may turn into storage. Partially, we have a bunch of sheds also for athletic storage right now, so we may use it as maybe a off-campus athletic coaches place and some storage. So we'll get that finally. The arm wrestling over that will happen once it actually gets moved.
Got it, sure.
I will say that, you know, there's still little stuff we're cleaning up, in the building and little things we're finishing, but again, still very, very happy with the new elementary school and how that is operating right now. For example, I think this last week, we finally got the shelves we were missing for some of the library shelving, so they've got all the books up in the library now. The shelves came, I think, a week and a half ago. So things that we're just still cleaning up. I think Oregon Corrections came and did some other improvements to furniture that was not ordered the right way in the first place. So little things that are still working themselves out. Workforce housing, continue to work with our partners on that and looking at a unit again in the Woodlands. Last one was about the max of where it could be and meet the qualifications, and we had a limited number, so there's been a lot of work to look at the type of unit that we're doing. So right now they're looking at one part of a triplex that would be potentially the piece that we would be looking at with staff. So we're continuing to move forward with that. Looks like they are, even with the inflationary trends, looking at some good efficiencies in that, and that obviously just the triplex in itself makes it a little more efficient than a standalone. So
Is that how many bedrooms are in those?
I think the
triplexes?
unit I think I think the one we were looking at was a 2-bedroom. So I'd have to double check my notes to make sure which one of the units of the triplex was the district's spoken for piece. But I believe it was a 2-bedroom.
Okay.
So let's see, I did also have a meeting, and I think I've shared this, you know, with now I'm gonna forget Clayton's title. But he's the manager of the group that's putting the proper or doing the workforce housing in that well house in
Right,
that property. And so we met about thinking bigger picture, longer term. Is it like the partnership with Rooted Homes and doing individual housing units, or do we want to look at multifamily units that are bigger? You know, so we're kind of trying to explore all fronts. So we'll continue down that conversation as the district continues to explore what it wants to do.
did Rooted Homes give you any sort of estimate of what those units would cost in comparison to the one we just did?
I believe they're trying to get the principal closer to 300,000 versus, or less versus the 350 that it was in the past unit. So,
It's not a huge improvement, but it's an improvement. I guess it is.
yeah,
Yeah. Percentage wise, it's a big improvement.
Yeah.
Where things
What?
are sitting now, that's.
Right, exactly. Like with inflation, if they,
yeah,
Like,
things are
ah.
continuing to go the other way.
You're
Yeah.
right. If it
Yeah.
goes down, maybe if it even just maintains, it will be okay.
Yeah. So,
Cool.
I'll give more updates as that gets more solidified. The reality is, even in their process, right, they're still in design phase of that unit, so it might be available for the next school year cycle, right? If they get it constructed fast enough, but there's some concerns that we're not sure what cycle that's gonna hit, because it takes time for that. They still have to submit plans, get all the things processed and get to them built, so they're still in that design phase. Then Park and Rec collaboration, things keep moving forward. It turns out that it looks like the city, to support some of the mental health services that we were wanting to be a partner over there, It looks like the city has to actually do a code change to have that be possible. So, we'll be working on that. I think Treehouse Therapies has a small footprint right now. That was one of the people we were looking at or the Park and Rec was partnering with as a possible partner over at the old facility to bring mental health supports to sisters for K to 18, 19-year-olds. So that process is slowing down for them. So we'll continue to advocate and see what we can do as a partner in trying to get a benefit service to kids and how we serve kids in the district or in the city.
I'm
So-
sorry, well, so you said it's Treehouse is slowing?
No,
down? Or,
the
I'm
process,
sorry,
the process of it, so the community center,
Yeah,
which is what it is. The language in city code, evidently there's a challenge to whether Treehouse Therapies could rent property in a community center and run business without a code change,
okay, all right.
right?
I had heard that, but then I thought it had been moving forward. Like, I
Yeah.
thought that-
Well, it
okay.
still is moving forward, but the forward isn't now the interpretation of a code, it's the rewrite of a code. Right, so that's the challenge.
Sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so.
okay, all right, thank you, I'm sorry, I just.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Sure, okay.
hopefully it'll keep moving forward. But that's where the update, they're doing construction. I was on a group working that they're getting feedback on their external field properties and what they're gonna do outside. So Park and Rec is continuing to move forward.
I know they got their grant for the park
Yeah.
outside, so
Yeah.
that's good.
Yep.
And I also know that Treehouse is already working in Sisters.
yes,
Yeah.
just not as big of a footprint as they would want,
Right,
for the need and demand, so,
so they're coming, it's
Yep.
just working out the details.
and that. We have several other things kind of working, continuing to do drop-ins in the schools. It would appear from my lens that. As a community, we figured out many of the traffic pattern issues, some of the stuff, I still think there's some improvements we can make. Maybe with finishing that walkway around the stadium parking in the spring when it warms up, right? But a lot of that stuff has seemed to settle quite a bit. The city did put a camera in and had their traffic engineer monitor the intersection for a while and give us some feedback. Their opinion was it was running pretty well. They didn't have any major recommendations for us. I could ask them for a second round if they want.
Well, I
I
noticed
know
that they're.
opinions vary on
I
that
like that
topic.
they're coming from Salem or Portland.
Yeah.
Right.
This is fine, you've got like 10 cars.
Yeah. I did notice that they are putting in another crosswalk. but
Yes.
Not even close to where I was hoping.
That I gave them that feedback as well, and that's not.
It's a completely,
I think
Kind
they're
of.
putting in multiple ones that I saw, but anyway,
still not the one I was.
yes. It's-
There was just one. Do you know?
I do not do drop off and pickup.
Yes.
So I
There's
have
just
to say that I am.
My
totally
concern is
unaware.
that
I mean,
intersection pulling in to the elementary school is a safety issue.
That's what I've heard.
Because
Yeah.
there are two crosswalks that are always being used and then four-way traffic in one spot.
Mhm.
And what I was hoping for, because all that foot traffic is coming from one neighborhood, is to move that crosswalk to the corner of the street where all the houses are.
Yeah.
And what they decided to do was put it way up the road over
I've
by
got
the
a spray
churches.
paint.
I'm in. Spray
So-
cans work.
So we'll continue to look at that and.
It would be great to ask them again,
Yeah.
because I'm really surprised. I understand their concern is about flow. My concern is about safety.
Yeah. And I think if we improve that sidewalk in the spring, they'll create a natural improvement anyway, so people can navigate around without. That
Right.
crosswalk at that intersection. So,
Is that the city that's got like actually puts it
The
as
ci-
what?
the city road is, I mean, really the interface from the rest of that is city.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, sorry, I didn't. Just-
Well, I am, we have no administrative reports, just to remind everybody that we have, most of our administrators are at the law conference, which started one of the sessions started today, which they went over for, and then I will be joining them in the morning. I'll be driving over in the morning, for the rest. I was saving some of the conversation, but we have time, I guess, until they get here, for our work session, but I can give you guys an update on the PERS issues and kind of maybe explain a little more of why we're in the situation we're in rolling forward with PERS. So, I'll make sure. Carol Samuels spent a long time telling people, giving people stuff, so I was taking some of the notes. So part of the problem is a little bit like the state school fund in that projection of our current service level, where they would look backwards too far, and we're calculating based on, they're looking at backwards trends, not forward trends. The same kind of thing happens with PERS. They're looking at rates going back the last 4 years. And that really doesn't account for what's happening right now. So that's one of the problems, why there's a gap between what we're paying right now versus was it covering the actual debt, and that creating a bigger issue in the next biennium. So that's one of the issues. The second issue is that they plan for a payroll increase of 3.4% from the PERS fund. So if districts are outpacing that, last year our COLA was 4.5%, or this year our COLA is 4.5%, which again, we're paying our well-deserving employees that. But what that's doing is we're paying more now than we're actually funding in the PERS account. So we're gonna have to make up for that gap as well. So those are a couple of reasons of why the fund, the unencumbered debt is increasing, not shrinking, even though they've made some reform. For us, we were one of the districts that bonded. Luckily, we weren't one of the districts. There were 7 districts that bonded in 2007. And when the 2008 crash hit, they actually, all those 7 districts lost money, and the PERS bond has been a burden on their PERS debt, PERS costs over the life of that. For us, ours matures in 2028, and we have actually realized savings, so it was a good investment for us. It's just these compounding factors are creating a magnification of rates. And really for some, there are some districts, they said that some districts with side accounts, because of side accounts, when they invested and how they invested, they're actually seeing a 0% gain next year. For us, we're seeing our rates double. We're seeing an 11% increase in what we were paying. So we're not as bad as Gladstone, who Gladstone was actually mentioned in this slide. Gladstone has over a 16% increase in their rates. So they are in considerably bad shape as far as the PERS rates go. Let me see. There was some other interesting factors, but again, it's basically that in the 22-23 biennium, they were expecting to cover the PERS fund needed to earn 6.9% just to stay idle, and it only earned 4% over those 2 years. So that's again another factor, just a general investment return from the PERS fund. It does seem strangely low, however, well, that's a management issue from the PERS side, and for whatever reason, they're saying, at least the meeting I was just on said the 22-23 years, they earned 4%.
That's
Instead of,
Especially for those years. Like that.
so, I think, well, again, this was Carol Samuels, who's Piper Jaffrey. She does all the stuff for them. Well, it's not Jaffrey anymore, it's Piper Sanderson? Sanders? Anyway, it's a new partner. Yeah, so I was just taking notes as she was chatting about it. The other interesting thing, we're looking at this next biennium rates being about 22%, so our 11 goes to 22. The 27, 29, they're expecting most districts to be close to 30%. So we'll see another 8% increase in the next biennium. So PERS is not an issue that's going away. The only thing, the benefit would be in the second half of that, we would no longer be paying a debt service on that bond, so we would save that money. So the second half of the 27, 29 biennium, the 28, 29 year, we will see relief only in the fact that we're not paying that debt service. It'll come off the debt service obligation in our budget. So that's the big picture of PERS right now for us. The other, so I would say the thing on the payroll, it's not just about COLAs. It's also that districts not only paid COLAs, but with ESSER money increased the number of people they employed. Right, so it's twofold there in the overall cost. So there's a lot of magnifications of why we're in the situation we are. There were a lot of conversations about kickers and how do you take, they're estimating a $1.8 million kicker, which is about what they think is the problem in PERS right now. But that takes a super majority. That means you would have to have not only all Democrats, which not all Democrats agree with resolving the issue with the kicker, but you would also have to get several Republicans to also agree to that. And so it takes a super majority to do anything with the kicker other than give it back to the people. So that's really not an option. And as I described, some districts are seeing zero impact and some are seeing exaggerated. So you have a wide variety of feeling that even if the legislature did get involved, it's not equitably helping districts. It's not an equitable solution to what's happening. And it seems like the sentiment is, well, as a district, we saved money over the life of it. So the fact that it's costing us a little more now, well, that's a part of what it is. So it doesn't feel like there's going to be a legislative fix. When the kicker, or actually when the rainy day school funds came up about, well, there's also triggers about being in a recessionary trend for a certain amount of time before those are tapped. And the other question was, well, as districts, have you guys tapped all of your rainy day funds? Right, which, we have our contingency in place and for those reasons. So that'll probably come into play for us as a district as a part of the conversation before it sounds like the legislature may be getting involved. That being said, we're still not where we need it to be in ours. I think we're right at the bottom, about 7. We should be between 8 and 11% is what they tell us. I think we're about 7%, I think is what we calculated, 7.5. So we're in that ballpark. So we're about as low as we should be.
Can we get some sort of report that shows us where we're going, like how much money exactly we're talking about for this first hit? You're saying it's going to get worse, and how do we budget for something like this?
Well, there again is the magic of school funding in the state of Oregon, because I could give you something and when they do the actuarials next year, it'll all change.
Right,
because if we're
But if we
paying
have
out
an
over,
idea, we can-
but if we're paying out over the 3.4%, right now, Sherry has estimated that our roll up for next year is about 1.2 million in PERS. That's just in police costs at our current levels. Right? So that's a part of the conversation is we may have to be a little leaner as we're looking at how we're moving forward, and plan for that more of a longer cycle. And those will be conversations as we prepare the budget, yes, in the spring.
and then when we, and forgive me, because I
Yeah.
don't understand PERS 100%. It's based on a salary, correct?
Hers is based on our overall payroll.
Across
And,
the board.
and what we're paying out based on, so there's different rates. Our tier 1 folks, we pay a different rate on those folks that have retired. We're paying out a different rate on tier 2 folks.
Right,
And we're paying out a different rate on tier 3. That the average hit for us is an 11% increase.
I agree.
So it's 3 different tiered programs in
Right.
PERS. And the other thing that I had said before is the reason we don't want to get panicked too much is until we know what the state school fund number is going to be, that will dictate if we have to cut it all, how deep it is, what does it look like? Right now, the governor's budget was released at 11.36 billion. Right, last year we were at 10.2 billion. So we're $1.16 billion more than we were last year. That's gonna give us money. Will it, the question is, what do we want to have that cover? Now, the other stuff that still isn't done, there was some discussion about covering special education up to 15% versus 11%. What that would do is, that means that 4% gap, we cover those services out of our general fund, not sped funding. So if they increase the sped funding to 15%, then our special education people will be not funded out of the general fund. So there'll be some savings in the general fund there, because they would then be out of that special education earmarked money. Right, so there's still some things, but it's still a net positive.
Right.
Yeah,
It's still a net positive on the overall state school fund, although they're in different pockets. So
But-
we're still waiting for all those things to land before we get too deep into the budget.
and
but-
that's like later this spring, that's all, or do they?
Yeah,
have
well,
it
just like every budget, right? The state doesn't
When does
really,
it-
they have to tell us the budget by June 30th. We have to approve a budget, right? We, in the spring, will get a better understanding of where it's gonna land. We won't know until, we typically approve the budget. Last year, we approved a budget and some small changes happened. It wasn't enough to trigger us to reapprove the budget, right? So it's the dance we play every biennium, not every year, but every biennium. So the next year, this year, we're in a kind of an estimate. And we think we're gonna know as we get through it. The next year, we'll actually know what our second year's money are, and it's a little more secure.
But the state sends that in June, or is it like May, June? I
Yeah,
just
they-
don't remember what the timeline is.
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
they don't have to ratify, I think it's still June 30th, but we,
Oh, okay,
yeah, I mean, we
Yeah.
typically approve ours in the first board meeting in June.
yeah,
We have to have ours approved by June 30th as well.
Yeah,
yeah,
And you mentioned that it's at 11% now, but it's going to go up to 22%?
no, that makes ours, we go from 11 to an average of 22% is what will be, so in the next biennium, it'll go up another 7%. Is what it's estimated,
A lot.
So,
so,
well, I'm sorry I'm late, but just to catch up, that's the PERS, that's PERS alone.
that's PERS alone.
And so in this chart, is that the associated payroll cost, the 26.59% that's on your pie chart for expenditures? Is that include, but that's
PERS,
including
healthcare,
that's including the PERS?
Yeah.
And so an additional $1.2 million hit is
estimated. to be in that.
estimated for, and our contingency is only at 1.44
Yeah, no, there's gonna be,
million.
now the increase in the
reserve
state school
of-
fund will bring in more money, but we're gonna have to make some choices, yeah.
Right. Okay.
And it's been hard to build it. I mean, in the 6 years I've been on the board, we've worked really hard to try to build that contingency.
And it's been slow.
Yeah,
Where
and it could be wiped out in literally unless there's a solution, but that's gotta be true. That's a problem that every school district in the entire state's gonna be facing.
Talking to the superintendent in Gladstone, well, I don't know what they'll end up doing, but he said their increase
Yeah.
in just PERS is about 20% of their budget. And so, I mean, if they're looking at their staffing numbers, so that's a big,
PERS is 20%.
that's a
not
big,
payroll.
that's a big,
Entire
that's,
budget.
yeah, that's a big deal. The state school fund increased from
That's
one,
crazy.
from 10.2 billion to 11.36 is about an 11% increase. So that, in the state school fund money, so that gets close to our PERS debt, but that's nothing else. I mean, that's none of the other old costs, it's none of the increased cost of healthcare for our folks, which will always go, I mean, shouldn't say always, typically goes up every year. COLAs, all the other stuff we're talking about, right, it's a part of that whole picture.
Right.
So again, more to come as we get more information. And it'll be, it'll make our budget meetings, very entertaining.
Looking forward to that. Okay.
All right, that's
Well,
probably way more than you
wait-
need to know
wait a-
about PERS right now,
leave-
but
Leave it
that's,
on a happy note.
Yeah, that's it. I'm optimistic, honestly, the fact that we are at. And now again, the COSA reminded us in the conversation that the governor's starting budget isn't always where it ends. So even though this is a governor's priority, doesn't mean that that number is locked in. But it's a really good starting place. And if we can secure that, it helps. I mean, if it was, which we do a lot of times, is just say, well, you did it last year at 10.2, so go ahead and we'll start at 10.2. I mean, we're in a much better position right now than we were a year ago. Even with these added cost drivers, so, I think we'll, although I say this and then I'll go home and lose sleep over it, or I'll freak out to Joe, about some payroll thing. But really the best advice is pause until the spring when we get, even more solid numbers, and then we'll look at it. And unfortunately, even though it's bad, it could be worse. So I'll try to the glass is half full speech from me all the time. All right. Any other questions about PERS that I can try to answer?
Not today.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is that it's the same conversation for like 30 years.
Yeah, well,
And
and
I think I did my thesis in 2001 on PERS, and it was the same issue. Now we're just like.
originally the actuarial,
It's got more zeros.
originally the
Yeah, it's
actuarial was
amazing.
that this was supposed to change in 2030 because again, this is morbid, but the tier one folks were supposed to die off and you're supposed to have less payouts to tier one by 2030. And then it was supposed to start improving. There is some question that maybe because people are living longer, that may get pushed out again. And it's hard to project because whatever the market does this year will impact our future rates, right? So even though right now they're anticipating 7, if the market goes crazy and they earn 12% and we're right, then it actually reduces the increase instead. So there's a lot of variables that it's difficult. We should be mindful. And, I think as we look at our budget approach, it's going to be mindfully conservative to help with a hit, but not to the detriment of services to kids now in the biennium. So that's gonna be our challenge. So.
Predicting I'm only gonna live 6 more years.
Yeah.
I've got a lot more.
It's not all tier one, not all.
Should we? I'm sorry, does anyone else have any questions at this time about PERS?
But
Should
have
we-
questions.
Should we take a break and probably with Rima
Why
and
don't
see
we
what's,
just see if they're ready?
But there, Rima has one student who is at basketball practice and will be here shortly.
Okay,
So they are not quite ready.
Okay.
But I think we could move down the agenda.
let's keep going then.
so, okay, so we're up to board business with David.
Yeah, so you guys on the board, I think, have probably heard wind of this, but I am making, and I've talked with Asa, I've talked with Kurt, and this is a hard decision for me, but I am making a decision that professionally things have changed for me for a whole lot of reasons that aren't very interesting to anyone but me. But I'm gonna be resigning my board position after I've enjoyed being on the board the last 6 years. And this is made with a lot of mixed emotions, but I don't think I can serve both the board to the extent that I need to, or my job to the extent that I need to. So I need to make a choice. And my choice at this point in time is to step away from the board. That's effective immediately, but I am committed to staying as long as Asa and the board needs me to stay in the position that I'm in. And so it's a process, but I wanted to announce that. I talked with Kurt and Asa extensively, and I wanted to announce it publicly. And it's it's been a great 6 years. I've learned a lot, and it's I never would have expected that it would have been as important of a job as it has been for me. So I do appreciate the time that I've been able to spend with all of you.
I would publicly like to thank you for your service. You've provided tremendous leadership for this group. We have been on a good path,
We've been on a very good path.
and you are partially responsible for that,
Thank you.
that growth, and I do appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much for some guidance.
Yeah,
Along the way.
you're excellent at the helm, and it was a privilege to be a part of this, for sure.
Thank you. You will be very missed. And hopefully we can just figure out a way to keep you in, so.
Yeah, yeah, I'll be around,
All
for
right.
sure.
I have to talk you into applying for a budget committee.
That might even be more work. All right,
We didn't
Are
sell
you
it
guys-
very well.
yeah, apologize for the mix up.
Cause I coach and I see this text from Todd being like, meeting started at 5, are you guys coming?
Thanks for being flexible.
Yeah, a bunch of these kids are in sports, but this is Heidi Dixon, and Heidi and I have been co-teaching biology this year, and Heidi is an amazing asset. And is just, we're just teaming it, it's been really fun, and so thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you. We're ready whenever, if you guys
So
need
I'll
time, or do you?
No, they're ready.
Okay,
Your timing was perfect.
yep.
And is there a clicker?
Here you go.
Maybe not seen, have you, the board members not seen some edition of this presentation, have you all seen it at least once?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Have you seen, Abby, so have you seen, did you see this last year, a similar one, I think? And so, each year, the biology students get to basically survey our forest that we have. The students will be teaching you about their ninth graders. They split into lots of different groups and cover the, like, a very good portion of the forest to basically assess what's out there. And so they're here to tell you about that. And maybe the parents could come in too if they want. Now,
Yeah, I'll invite them. Yeah, we're just excited to have them share their experience in their unique experience. Which is really cool. They've been working hard at their lunchtime to prepare this presentation. So,
Very
thank
cool.
you.
There you go, way to go.
Yes. Yeah. I went skiing. Oh, you did? Yeah, I was skiing. The last time we went over there. No, they're open. Yeah, they opened last Friday. But I had no rock. Beautiful.
it's over here.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. Glad to have you here. It's my pleasure to announce our beautiful presentation here. Today, we'll be talking about the Trout Creek Conservation Area, or mostly referred to as the TCCA. We've been studying this with all 5 periods of our biology class, from October 1st to October 16th. We're going to be presenting some data here and showing you some insight about the TCCA. That will hopefully help affect some important upcoming community decisions. First, come on.
Carter, would you explain that picture? Cause
Oh, yeah, sure.
think it's pretty.
So I'm pretty sure, this is not in my group, but this is a tray that you set out in the forest, and you're able to see those like animal prints or any kind of prints going above this. And we took a photo of that, so I'll use that as the background here, but I don't know if there's any animal prints in this one, but yeah. First, I'm gonna thank my presenters here, myself, Carter, Brooklyn, Elena, Jasper, Kenzie, Maddie, Kenzie, Avery, Georgia, Melanie, Parker, and Reed. I also want to give an acknowledgement. Come on, there you go. I want to give an acknowledgement to some of the tribes here. Who have carried and lived on this land for a long time. In Central Oregon and where the TCCA is now. These tribes are the Yaskin tribe, excuse me. Malala tribe, the Nino tribe, Paiute tribe. And the people who descended from these tribes are part of the Klamath tribes, Confederated tribes of Grand Ronde, and the Confederated tribes of Warm Springs. We'd like to honor the people who came here before us and carry on the legacy of caring for the land. Anyway. Easy overview. There you go.
The Trout Creek Conservation Area, TCCA, is 160 acres of forest between Sisters High School and Tollgate. It was originally a logging area in the 1950s. After the logging era, it was obtained by the Forest Service, who then, in the 1990s, did a land swap with Sisters High School, who still own the TCCA to this day. In 2006, the land was thinned and partially mowed to protect it from wildfires. They did leave several clumps of forests alone. You will see these circled in red on the map. These are the focal species that thrive in our TCCA. The white-headed woodpecker or Picoides abelivardis, Pex pensiment or Penstemon pecii, and the flammulated owl or Psiloscopes flammulus all live here year-round and are special organisms. The white-headed woodpecker has only 240,000 individuals left. The white-headed woodpecker lives in Central Oregon and the TCCA year-round. It loves standing dead trees called snags to nest in. It needs healthy forests to provide food and habitat, which our TCCA provides. Pex pensiment is a beautiful flower and a sensitive species that only grows in a 500 square mile area. It grows around TCCA creek bed following its path. The flammulated owl only has 37,000 individuals remaining, and like the white-headed woodpecker, it makes its home in Central Oregon and TCCA year-round. These birds need the standing dead snags, dead wood, and trees our TCCA provides. They love large pines to nest in and find the food they need, which is mostly bugs, in our forests, like TCCA Creek Conservation Area. The TCCA is now used for students of Sisters High School to study as a part of our biology curriculum. It also is used for recreational purposes such as hiking, running, and bird watching.
While we studied the TCCA, we strive to find changes that have happened over many years, and in recent years have found similar patterns in data. While we studied the TCCA, we also strive to find if we should do a controlled burn or mowing of the forest anytime soon. During this study, we went to the TCCA for 7 days. Every day we would do things like recording temperature, recording animal sign, and adding to our plot drawings. We also measured our trees and wrote down signs of plants. We measured our transect lines, which were the north to south and east to west transects, to find the total plant percent cover in our plots. At the end of our study, we wanted to find the answer to these questions. What plants and animals live in the TCCA? How many trees are there and how big are they? What is the percent coverage of each plant? What habitat is available, especially for focal species? How are humans impacting the TCCA? How can humans help support the forest? What do humans gain from the forest? And how has the forest changed over time?
So these are our plots. So all of us here, we have the different colors. So for example, I'm red. You can see my plot is right there, right above Trout Creek. And so all of us here, studied each of these plots. So you can see outlined there on the map.
So while studying the TCCA, we used a variety of methods. One of the methods we used was creating plot transects by finding a center point and then from there measuring north, northeast, east, southeast, south, all the way around. We also used a thermometer to help measure the daily temperature, and at the end of our study, we were able to average up the temperature to find the average of
every day. We also use the measuring tape to measure the height of trees using the clinometer, which we'll go over. And we also use it to measure plants along the transect and find the percentage of plants in our plot. We use a clinometer, a tool to measure tree heights from the ground, and a DBH tool, a tool that measures the diameter from 1.43 meters high or breast height to answer the question, how many trees are there and how big are they? And then we use a transect to measure the plant percentage cover. This method helped us answer how much of each plant there was.
This is the tree overview.
Based on the data that we collected through counting and measuring the trees in each 1/10 of an acre plot, we estimated the number of ponderosa pine trees larger than 10 centimeters in diameter per acre to be around 76, with only about 2 western juniper trees larger than 10 centimeters diameter per acre.
In the map of TCCA, the sections outlined in red represent wildlife clumps, which was mentioned earlier, which are areas that are left alone, well, like in the thinning in 2006. They have a much higher density of trees. This is demonstrated in plot 8. It's a wildlife clump and it has 41 trees compared to the other open areas that have much fewer trees in them.
The estimated number of ponderosa pine trees in the entirety of the TCCA is 12,096. The average ponderosa pine height to 20.6 meters, which is about 67.7 feet. And the average DPH, which stands for diameter at breast height, at about 44.7 centimeters, which is 17.6 inches. And the estimated number of western junipers is only about 304. The picture here was taken by a trail cam that we set up. The niche, or also known as the role of the trees in the TCCA forest, involves supporting the diversity of all living organisms that need food and sources for their habitats. The trees are also a major source for good air quality in the area of the forest in the process of carbon dioxide onto the cycles. Trees can also provide support towards the health and healing of the water through the soil, which is critical for other plants and animals that will live in the forest.
Based on our plot averages, we estimated there to be about 22,240 ponderosa pine seedlings and saplings under 2 feet, and only about 1,100 juniper seedlings and saplings under 2 feet. Based on our data, the majority of the small ponderosa pine seedlings don't survive, whilst the juniper seedlings have like a much higher chance of survival. They have certain defense mechanisms that can help them. And it was a little bit more difficult to identify the smaller juniper seedling saplings, because they're just a little bit more stand out. Snags are crucial habitat for the flammulated owl and white-headed woodpecker, which are the focal species in the TCCA, along with other animals in our forests. There are an estimated 237 snags in the TCCA. Downwood is also important habitat for smaller animals in the TCCA. There are an estimated 7,881 pieces of downwood. This does include piles from the thinning in 2006.
Here we have the plant data. We have Idaho fescue, which has a coverage of 28.3%, and it helps provide forage for wildlife.
Next plant we have is antelope bitterbrush, which covers 42.9%. That's our estimate. And next to the information box, there's a picture of that plant. It's a critical feed source for many animals, and it provides shelter for a lot of the small animals.
Next is squirrel-tail bottlebrush, which has a percent cover of 1.8%. So, and it's it's food for wildlife and helps with erosion control. Lily penstemon is our next plant, and it has a coverage of 1.6%. It helps attract bees, butterflies, moths, and hummingbirds.
All of these plants play a vital role in the forest as they provide shelter, soil stability, oxygen, and much more to our ecosystem.
And then all the plants on the side are plants that we saw in our plots, but they did not have a percent cover. That was very good. Next, we have our animal overview, and that picture was a picture, I believe, taken by Ms. Gibbet, of a spider in the TCCA. So some mammals and their signs that we saw were included deer, and we saw deer scat and tracks, which you can see there. We also caught some deer on the trail cam. There were squirrels, which were observed, meaning we physically saw them, and we saw their burrows. We also saw chipmunks and saw their burrows. We found plants that had been chewed on, which were signs of mice, and the golden mantle ground squirrel, which were observed, and we saw their burrows. There were, however, few reptiles and amphibians, but the ones we did see were lizards, which were observed, skinks, which were also observed, and frogs, which were observed, and we heard their croaking.
We observed many invertebrates and signs of invertebrates in the Trout Creek Conservation Area. Some of these include red ants and our anthills, which you can see we have a picture of that on the top. We saw black spiders, and we saw we heard grasshoppers, crepitaceans, but also known as they're called. And that bottom picture is a picture of a grasshopper, so we also observed them. We also directly observed yellow jackets, honeybees, and wasps. We heard many bird calls and also saw some of these birds directly. Some birds we heard were common ravens, red-tailed hawks, pygmy nuthatches, white-headed woodpeckers, and chickadees. We also directly saw the white-headed woodpeckers and chickadees, as well as buttonbills. And that picture on the top is a picture of a white-headed woodpecker, and a circlet, so it's a little easier to see. And then the one on the bottom is a flammulated owl, which we did not see, and I don't believe we heard, but they are a crucial species in our TCCA. The conclusion.
So the forest provides a lot of things to us, including oxygen, because of photosynthesis, and there's a variety of medicinal plants throughout the TCCA as well. The trees help counteract climate change with the buffer of carbon sequestration, and the forest provides us with recreation and leisure as well. The forest maintains the water cycle through transpiration, and it provides us with knowledge and beauty. To protect the forest, we should really help native plants, and that involves staying on trail, keeping dogs on leash, avoiding horses and motorized vehicles in TCCA, and protecting the TCCA from wildfires. We also really need to make sure to add more signs, so that way all these things are made known to people who are visiting TCCA.
We have many impacts on the forest, whether positive or negative. Some positive impacts we have are fire control and animal protection, and some negative impacts are killing plants and disrupting animal life. We have many connections and relationships with the forest and each other. We go to the forest to study and learn how to protect it, and provide carbon dioxide so the trees can breathe. Some good relationships we have with the forest are studies and carbon dioxide, and some bad relationships are damage of plants and animal life. We also work on creating good relationships and connections with each other in the classroom. There are changes that we are hoping to make by helping the forest, including less damage to plant and animal life, fire control, and more paths.
We do have some ways for the forest, such as dogs staying on leashes so they don't hurt our focal species, such as the Pex penstemon with them stepping on it, which kills it. Following along with the focal species, we do not want people to pick plants, especially our focal species, Pex penstemon. We should also watch out for motorized vehicles ruining our forest trails, and they create a loud sound scaring animals. We should focus on fire ladders, which is when brush is caught on fire, and if it is long enough, they go up to branches and cause fires to spread on the canopies and can cause it to jump from tree to tree.
All right, thank you guys so much. Do you have any questions that hopefully me or my acquaintances here can answer?
I have a question. Because I've been sitting through these each year. Do you do, and it's a great presentation. I think it gets better every year. So very nice job. But do you compare the size and number of trees, say this year compared to say last year or 2 years ago or 5 years ago? Is there a direct comparison across the years?
We do. We have a Google sheet over, geez, how many years? 15 years of trees, plants, a ton of different data. That's all compared.
Have you noticed a trend? Are there more trees, less trees, trees growing at a certain rate?
Could the tree people answer that?
Yeah. Hello, tree people.
It's been staying pretty consistent.
there are some fluctuations, but I mean, it's students measuring data, so they're not always perfectly accurate. So I can't get a clear read on the increase or decrease.
But because I see that you see, maybe 1,200 little you see a lot of
There's
little tiny
yeah.
trees and then are the next year you're seeing more 4-foot trees or 3-foot trees or
I think so.
is there a trend?
I mean, with the ponderosa pine, they don't like survive as much.
Mhm.
And that definitely the saplings, they tend to not make it out as much as the junipers. They're not as resilient to the conditions such as like smoke or like snowy weather, or something like that.
I feel like we've maybe added 1 or 2 tags onto trees but it's been a really slow process, but they're pretty consistent, like not a lot of growth.
Yeah.
Change, just kind of steady little increment.
Mhm.
I would say the brush has gotten a little bit more.
That question, have you guys, maybe it's for Rima, but, I know we have great partnerships with the Forest Service. Anybody from the Forest Service come talk about ladder fuel concerns or future of the?
That's here where we need to, it's time for that, I think. Be interesting to see what they'd say about even doing some kind of a mosaic. Where it's not just taking everything, but
Yeah.
a little bit of maybe a mosaic control burn, but I'd like to hear an expert's advice on that.
Well, you gotta leave the PEX fence to them. That's what my kids remember about you.
I think it's resilient though from fire. I think
It is.
so.
Wow. It's good to know.
The area that comprises the TCCA, is that only to the west of the tollgate trail, or does it also go to the east? And I have a second follow-up question.
No, it does go to the east, a little bit, so the tollgate trail, it's kind of a little windy, goes up to the side and back off. It is a lot, the majority of the TCCA is to the west. But once you enter the TCCA from the high school, you maybe have, like 30-40 feet off to the east, that is still a TCCA.
And then some of it is property on the east side, like I know one person has a house back there and they have a lot of acreage to the east.
And then the follow-up question to that is, considering that there is a development that was just finished in the last few years, are you seeing increased evidence of human interference within the TCCA, and what does that manifest as?
We don't have too many stats on human interference. We definitely do see a lot of people coming through there. It's a really popular area. But I'm not really sure on how the trends are changing there.
Any of you guys saw that? And we talked about that a little, there's significantly more people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say that, yeah.
And significantly more dogs.
That's that.
I would say
And there
probably,
is more motorized vehicles.
there have been some, I think sometimes the people walking displaced motorized, but the dogs probably would be the biggest one, is just bringing people that on leashes, or having dogs on leashes.
One of the challenges we're also working with, so we manage the conservancy as a part of it, so it's our property. So we're working with. And Steve, who is it, Deschutes County, who is the land trust? The land trust? Yeah. And so we're working with them still to figure out like how new technologies like e-bikes are a great way to recreate. But the class of e-bikes, which ones technically any motorized vehicle is not allowed on TCCA. So even the trail, technically an e-bike wouldn't be allowed on. However, a class C, it tends to be one that is less disruptive, and if it stays on the trail, so there's some conversation about even looking at our charter with how that interface goes. So these are always informative for us as we look at that relationship and how do we move. When we got the property, an e-bike wasn't a reality, right? So it's now a different, it's a different technology to consider the impact on that environment and the trail and how people. But we've hauled cars out of there, we've hauled all kinds of stuff from, we've had some camps that have happened that we've had to clean up. It's been a considerable amount of disruption in there in the last decade anyway.
Definitely, yeah.
I think it would be very interesting to have maybe even to invite some students to that conversation when we bring those, the Deschutes Land Trust folks together and consider maybe having different areas of different use too.
I know, and when Ian gets back, I intend to connect, we've been talking about having their burn person come in and chat with the class at some
Great.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably
Wow.
time to kind of revisit, and entry points is another piece, that entry point behind over by the pond is pretty easy spot to drive.
Wish over here.
Just curious in all your time out in the woods, if you had any surprises, maybe something you were expecting, one observation, but observed something different.
Not our, I mean, our group is pretty steady. Me and Millie here, we're in the same group together. We actually had a new plot this year, so a plot that's never been studied before. So we didn't really see like any trend surprises or just really any surprises out there in general. Don't know about anyone else. Anyone see anything there?
Well, in our plot, we were kind of expecting there to be more expensive than there was,
Sure.
and we didn't end up really seeing it, so that was a surprise to us.
Yeah, our plot was on the creek and the majority of Peck Penstemon is within 50 to 100 feet of the creek. Not like almost, I've actually never seen like outside of that range.
No.
And so we were on the creek kind of expecting to see some Peck Penstemon and yeah, nothing any.
Our group caught a skunk on our trail cam for like the first time. I did add to that, that our plots saw a little bit of increase in cheatgrass. And it's particularly when they're close to trails, so the cheatgrass, you know, how it just kind of marches along. And that's happening certainly in spots in the
Yeah, we see cheatgrass grows a lot better in more disturbed areas rather than just natural wild areas. Any more questions?
Did you ever imagine as eighth graders, you'd be presenting to the school board and just doing a fantastic job?
No.
On the night of finals.
jeez.
Very
Oh,
lucky.
jeez.
I know some of us have come back from practices, so from practice right to here. But it's been a fun day. Fun day.
Well, thank you all very much. Thanks for the education.
Absolutely.
There's another
Was
one.
it the question? Also, finally, just like to thank our mentors, class teachers, Rima Gibbet, Heidi Dixon, and Caleb Campbell.
For you.
Sorry, guys. So, real quick, I'm sure most of you are aware of, or not. Sisters is making a urban growth boundary and being in conversation about expanding its urban growth boundary. Will this be something that you would want to contribute to the conversation?
Definitely. Yeah, you can see that, if you look at the TCCA, I can go back to the map, but it's bordered by the high school, Tollgate and Reed's Ranch. So there's one open wild side off to the east in the urban growth boundary we're looking to expand.
No.
That would be looking to expand through that area, which could potentially close off the TCCA, which would really impact wildlife transportation or migration trying to go through there. And we'd have to look at how that could change. Like I'm not looking at anything.
Yeah.
Alright, also for that, we were thinking about creating like a small sliver of land on either side of the highway frontage, so that way animals, or even like a land bridge, so that way animals would easily get over and wouldn't be disturbed through the residential areas.
So like, right in here. If they, with the urban growth boundary, where they're able to maintain some wild land along that creek, that might create a corridor for wildlife coming from. Yeah.
Is that property one of the phases of the? Yeah.
It's way down on the list because it's forested. I think they're looking at the more farmed areas and more open areas first, but it is. Yeah, it would be interesting. I'm curious what you think, Kurt, about them, because something to the city council to show them that, like, as neighbors, what's out there.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, even with our sliver of school district property that connects to that goes beyond. Right, that interfaces with an intersection in the Reed property, our pond, which is not a part of the PCCA, but it's school district property that runs to 242. How that continues, and then you have crossroads down the road a little bit. Yeah, I think that's the challenge of, a community or a city looking at the growth, basically regulations set up by the state and being forest bound by not a lot of federal forests. And what does that do to your opportunities for growth? So that's really the challenge. I've had been involved with a lot of those conversations. More of an obstacle for us for this piece, but one, it's a great asset to have right next to us. I would be interested, I'm a tollgate resident and boy, there's a massive 5-point running through chasing a doe through our neighborhood. Right? It doesn't really mitigate some of the patterns because the wildlife adjusts. I know it would some, so that's interesting. We also, have another 160 acre piece of property that we're just starting to develop as an opportunity for the district out Stevens Canyon. That'll be interesting as well. So I think for us, at least from a student perspective, we're gonna have opportunities as we continue. I am interested, that being said, not a criticism because the Reeds can do what they want, but they fenced that property a few years back and that is really that I would say has had a bigger impact on the wildlife. They're going through Tollgate more than they used to go through that field. Because they have a gate for the wildlife the domesticated animals that they use on their ranch. They have made a better situation for their ranching, but not as strong I don't see coyotes nearly as much as well as deer out in that field that we used to. For the last 6 years. So.
Yeah, the conversation around corridors as development happens is an interesting one.
And I know I think the Forest Service is working on a major one on, I think Highway 20, they're looking at a conversation, yeah, an underpass for animals.
So that, this along Route Creek is part of that, what it could have been. Yeah, that's a great question.
Thank you all.
Thanks for accommodating.
Yes,
No
thank you
worries.
guys.
Glad it worked
Fantastic.
out.
And good luck on finance.
Yeah.
I like that under promise and over under promise over. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, whatever. One of them.
That worked out just fine.
Yeah, it did, for sure. Thank
Thank
you.
you, guys.
And honestly, I didn't even know it was possible. Then it was, so there we go.
All right, should we finish up? Because we have another meeting to go.
Yes,
we do.
Consent agenda. Or announcements, or you already did that, consent agenda. Regular board meeting minutes. Anyone have any questions on last meeting minutes?
I move that we accept minutes.
I will second that.
I'll wait till Jenica can hear us and then I'll ask the question. She's shutting the door.
Well, out of order anyway.
Oh, that's right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
I,
Jenica, are you in favor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good, it's unanimous.
And then announcements, as of right now, our next board meeting is January 8th. Because the January 1st is a Wednesday,
Yes.
so we're moved to the 8th. And for now, it says 6 p.m. But I hope to change that.
Wait,
Perfect.
can you just say whatever the calendaring thing is? What is it?
January 8th is our next board meeting.
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was changing. I'm sorry. I thought we were
Well,
talking about
not
changing.
yet. I'm hoping that we do change
Oh, okay.
it.
Well, it's actually, that week is kind of bananas for me, so I don't know if it's possible to change that, like, to the.
Let's
following
discuss
week.
it in our next
the
meeting.
word?
Or can we
This
discuss?
is the
You know,
next
we can add it to our
yeah,
work
that is
session.
the next meeting.
Well, the next meeting is our work session.
Yeah, the one
But-
today
Oh,
at 6.
The only rule is you just have to give people, I believe it's 48 hours notice on the public meeting. I mean, so you could change it
Okay.
We'll
Yeah,
check.
I
we
just
can
think
move
we
it,
could just
maybe.
leave it, I just might
No, I'm,
call in, just like not, just be absent
We can
again.
talk, we can
I
add, we
also-
can add it to our work session.
so maybe we look at January 15th.
So the discussion, I don't believe in the work session, we had discussion, but can't really move.
Right.
And so, even with the meeting, we can, as long as we publicly notice it, so if people are interested in exploring the 15th, Amy can reach out to folks. And we can just notice it and make sure we notify everybody, but, if we were entertaining the 15th as a better date. We can look at that and communicate that out as we.
Yeah,
as we go.
for sure, like check with, administration if
Yeah.
they're,
And we have the auditors now coming, so we would
Yeah.
have to move.
they're-
the
yeah,
auditors.
so I, that's what I'm saying, there's a lot of logistics involved, and so.
Let's double check that. It might, the time
Okay.
is easier than the date, so let's.
So let's, yes, okay, so we'll just leave it as is for now. Anything else before we adjourn this meeting? Okay, meeting adjourned, 6:17.
Sweet.
Should we take like just a few minutes and then, start our work